Okay, we're coming to the finish line here now. Here's our extra pieces that were left from the 7 that we started with. Remember, we had 4 that we used for the body, and we cut 1/2 of one of them off, so that's in with this little bunch right here. And then we used 1 right here for our border. And now we have these left, and we're going to make a binding out of these. Now we're going to sew these pieces together the same way we sewed our initial jelly roll strips together. But I like my bindings to be kind of variegated. So what I'm going to do, or what I did, is I cut my pieces in half so that I'll have more variety as I'm going around my edges when I bind. And remember, I'm going to lay, oops, I have my stitch in the ditch foot on. I don't think that matters. I can use that. This is something that's called the binding tool, and a lot of people swear by this. I've had mixed results with it. I'm going to show you how I use it, but I'm not using it in the prescribed way that the person who invented it projected to it to be used. However, the directions are right on the tool itself. I'm going to show you my method, and then if you get this tool, you can experiment with it. It works a little bit better on a bigger thing than a small thing like a placemat. Works better on a quilt than it does on something small. So I'm going to use this in just a minute when I join my ends. Now I'm going to put my binding on. The binding I've ironed so that it's folded in half and it's not on the bias, so you can just use your regular jelly roll strips. And the way I attach it is I start sewing it on the corner of the back. I do not hand stitch my binding. So if that's something that you want to do, you can use the same method, except when I do the method where I attach the binding by machine, you can do it by hand. Now when I'm doing it, I like to have one pin handy. Let me grab one of them. And when I get to the corner, I will show you how I will do the mitered corner. Okay? I'm going to start about 6 to 8 inches from the corner with my stitching. And I need to leave a tail of binding kind of loose from the piece that I'm binding, because I need a little bit of space to be able to manipulate using that binding tool to make sure that I can attach my both ends of this together, and I have enough space to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start right about here, and then when I get to the corner, I'll show you where we need to stop, how I stop, and how I get my good mitered corners. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to use our 1/4 of an inch seam. And now I'm coming close to the end of the piece where I'm going to do my corner. Now's where I want to get my pin out, okay? And I'm going to pin about 1/4 of an inch from the end of the piece that I'm binding, and I'm going to put my pin in there. This is going to be my signal that I need to stop there, and I'm either going to bar tack or I'm going to back stitch, which I usually back stitch there. And then I'm going to stop and take the whole piece off the machine. Okay, I'm coming up close, 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 one more stitch, back. And then I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to take it off. Now I take the pin out. Save that for the future. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. I have a space here. I'm going to take this whole binding, and I'm going to bend it up like this. Okay, so that it's got 1/4 of an inch. Here's where my miter is going to be. And then I'm going to turn so that I'm going to start stitching down on this side. So I just pull the whole thing down. I measure and have this fold even with the top, and I'm going to start my 1/4 inch seam again right there in the corner. Now the key to success is to not overstitch where you just left off, where you stop stitching, because if you do that and you don't get a nice miter, you get a scrunched up edge, and that is not what you want. Okay, so I'm kind of getting to the part where I'm coming to the end here. I just changed fabrics from one fabric to the next. I'm getting close to that edge, so I'm going to get my pin, and I'm going to find my place where I want to stop, which is right about here. Put my pin in. The pin is not really there for anything other than to just kind of give you a visual cue of when it is that you're supposed to stop stitching. So I'm almost coming up to it, coming up one more and backward. Okay, and then I'm going to cut, and I'm going to do the same thing. Take my pin out. I've got that much. I got a little bit more this time than I really need, but it'll be okay. So I want to go ahead and pull this back. There's my miter again. Turn my whole piece around and fold down this binding. And even if I miss by one little stitch right there, it really doesn't matter, because it will not rip apart there, because it's going to be stitched very strongly when you do the next step. I'll trim those little dog ears off.